What's up, your boy Vaughn? The reaction in today's video after this position is going to take over the NFL by Targot Kent. I think you're talking about safeties. Safeties is important, y'all. Nick Emenwari, Kyle Hamilton, they important. I'm telling you, the last two Super Bowl teams, what they had, amazing safety, Nick Emenwari and C.J. Gardner-Johnson with the Eagles.
In 2006, NFL defenses ran base personnel, that is, any package with 4 defensive backs on the field, 41% of the time. In 2010,
damn, that nigga Desmond Watson, bro.
That number dipped to 36%. It's a little lower, but still the most popular defense ran in the NFL at the time. In 2024, that number dipped to 23%. In today's NFL, nickel is by far the most prevalent defense used. But something interesting happened in 2025. Base personnel rose by 6%, up to 29% league-wide. Nickel was still the most popular package, but teams came out heavier this season thanks to a rise in 12 personnel usage league-wide. Makes sense. More tight ends on the field, you want to be heavier. However, when you rank the best defenses in the NFL based on DVOA, a metric that ranks a team's success on a down-to-down basis against the rest of the league, think of it as like war, but for actual play-to-play success, the teams that are in the highest and the top of that list often major in nickel. The Seattle Seahawks, the team that ranked number 1 in DVOA by quite a large margin, ran base personnel just 6% of the time. That's right, in a league where multiple tight ends are taking over, in a division with the Rams, who ran multiple tight ends more than vast majority of teams in the league, the Seahawks responded by putting more defensive backs on the field. And in that same season, they won the Super Bowl. But it goes further than that. The Rams, who ranked 4th in DVOA this season, ran base personnel 25% of the time. The Texans, who ranked 2nd, ran it 25% of the time as well. And the Broncos, who ranked 5th, ran it 26% of the time. The Seahawks, clearly an outlier, but all the best defenses in the NFL ran base significantly less than league average. But how? What enables them to find success with lighter defenders on the field? We don't have to stray far away from the Seahawks to see why. It's because of an evolution of the nickel corner pioneered by their head coach,
that nigga Brock Turdy, trash,
Mike McDonald. I'm calling it the super nickel.
Hey, okay, cool, great. My mama told me that you ain't right for me.
He do everything on the field, bro. And this nigga a rookie, y'all.
I wanna put it to your crib, I'm a papa. 60 bands on your head.
This is a big man now, 6'3", 220 pounds, playing that nickel position.
Bitch, I'm flowing. Drop through the walls, get close, cause I'm ballin'. Got 6 on my wrist, your mama been started. Face on, fake on. I told you, we bringing that back to the crib.
Listed as a safety, but get him close to the line of scrimmage and he makes plays behind the line of scrimmage. That's very rare to find.
The NFL as a whole has shifted to this positionless, versatility-centered attack on both offense and defense. You see it on offense more frequently. Most progressive teams are using smaller slot receivers as the focal point of their attack. Think JSN, CeeDee Lamb, Puka Nacua, guys that maybe traditionally wouldn't be that sought after. You see it with tight end as well. The position has gotten lighter and bad at blocking. Not bad, but worse at blocking. Think of your Colston Loveland types, your Brock Bowers. They're not terrible blockers, but it's not their focal point. It's not their strength. But those guys are a little more common. What makes these super nickels, guys like Emenwari, Kyle Hamilton, so intriguing to me is how rare they are. Usually on a traditional defense, it's the guys up front that are the beefy, excellent tackler types. They're the ones plugging gaps, blowing up runs, rushing the passer. Because of that, you sacrifice
God damn, bro, that hit's still crazy.
A little in the coverage
That was last season.
Department, especially at middle linebacker. A lot of teams had your thumper type linebackers for early downs, and then those light sub guys that you moved better for passing downs. Same with pass rushers. You usually have guys that are run stuffers, think of your DeMarcus Lawrence, and then you have guys who are more designated pass rushers. Obviously, the best guys in the league can do both, but the vast majority of NFL players play a role. But you don't really see that hybrid role in the back end, unless it's a really good, strong safety, because you really don't need it, right? Most nickel corners traditionally were guys that were just too small to play on the outside. They were still excellent in coverage, but they came in on late downs. You didn't really need them to tackle. What makes Kyle Hamilton and Nick Emenwari so different is the fact that they are on the field the majority of the time, the vast majority of plays. What enables them to do that is their size. Kyle Hamilton is 6'4", 218 pounds. Emenwari, 6'3", 220. They're both kind of built like box defenders. They've got the height of a traditional linebacker with kind of like a tweener weight between a corner and a linebacker. What separates them from guys like Mike Hilton, who I actually appreciate as almost a pioneer for the position because he was a really good run defender, is their ability to neutralize personnel. Kyle Hamilton specifically is so good because not only does he take on blocks from tight ends, sometimes tackles, sometimes even interior offensive linemen, he's also able to carry tight ends up the seam or carry slot receivers on a crossing route. He's able to play the role of a linebacker and a nickel corner at the same time. It's not very common. Nick Emmanwori, same thing. His position says nickel corner, but oftentimes, especially on early downs, he's lined up in the box as a linebacker. His ability to fit the run from that size is remarkable. Don't get me wrong, he's not prime Bobby Wagner, he's not a traditional thumping linebacker, he's not taking on double teams, stacking and shedding, but he does really, really well for a dude who just wouldn't normally play there. What's crazy about Emmanwori especially,
This is why I want Caleb Downs. This is why I want the Saints to draft Caleb Downs with that 8 pick. I know he 5'11", Caleb Downs. He's not Nick Emmanwori size, Kyle Hamilton size, but I don't give a fuck. Just look at the tape game. Pull up the tape.
is his prowess defending the run on the line of scrimmage. Traditionally, for a guy that's 220 pounds, lining him up just outside of the end, either you're sending a blitz or you're asking to get trounced over. But Emmanwori frequently makes it work. Shoving off tackles, spilling counters, he does a lot of things, frankly, a defensive back shouldn't be able to do. That's what makes things in Seattle so special.
That nigga getting back there.
They use Emmanwori as like a queen in chess. They line him up everywhere, and they don't worry about their ability to fit the run because they trust him doing that. And stuffing the run is a big part of Seattle's defense as a whole. Mike Macdonald talks frequently about defending the run from a too-high shell and how important it is. He talks about how it puts a lot of strains on defensive tackles, ability to two-gap, your end's ability to set the edge, how safeties have to be integrally involved in run fits. The talent around him certainly makes Emmanwori appear as a better run defender than he actually is. Don't get me wrong, this isn't, again, prime Bobby Wagner. His team does a lot to elevate his play, but again, for a guy his size, a guy who's playing the nickel position, he should not be as good as he is. And Seattle was still worse defending the run against heavier packages. They specifically...
Where he got picked at? Because this nigga dropped in the draft, actually, Nick Emmanwori. Let me see. Damn, round 2, pick 35? Damn. God, I know his card going for crazy. Well, it's going to start going for crazy.
struggled against teams like Arizona, teams that were very heavy in 12 and 13 personnel. Definitely the first time they played the Rams, but they didn't struggle as much as a team that you would think has Nick Emmanwori on the field all the time. Think of Kyle Hamilton as like a supercharged version of him, a guy Mike Macdonald also coached, and Baltimore does not struggle against heavier personnel nearly as much as Seattle does. Back to a comment I made earlier about personnel neutralizing. Right now, the NFL is getting heavier. In 2018, about 16% of all offensive plays were ran out of 12 personnel, with that number rising to 23%, the highest since the league started tracking in 2000.
That nigga Kidyon Sadiq, beast boy. That's a freak of nature.
2007 and 2025. These big nickels are the NFL defense's version of countering that. Not only can Kyle Hamilton take on a block from a tight end, he can also carry one up the seam. That alone makes it a schematic neutral. And I know what you're thinking. What makes this player different from like a traditional linebacker who is really athletic that could do the same? Think of like a Fred Warner. I think it's their ability to also counter the slot receiver meta, the JSN, Puka Nacua, CeeDee Lamb meta that exists in the NFL. Fred Warner can. He's a bit of an outlier in that regard. Most linebackers cannot deal with that kind of speed. Guys like Nick Emmanwori, guys like Kyle Hamilton, they can't. And that's what makes them so important to their respective defenses. Because of that, it makes the personnel advantage part of building an offense completely mute. You cannot create an advantage by bringing out 3 tight ends. You cannot create an advantage by bringing out 3 wide receivers because the other team has a guy who can stop both of them. It's like a cheat code. And you don't have to adjust. You don't have to bring a linebacker who's worse playing coverage to plug up the run on first and second down, which leaves you vulnerable to play action or a hurry-up meta that was really popular in college and had a few waves in the NFL for a little. You don't have to have a player on a third and short who needs to be able to carry a tight end up the seam, and that leaves you vulnerable to just a run stuff up the middle. Because Nick Emanwori, Kyle Hamilton, guys of that nature can do both. It's like the opposite of a matchup nightmare tight end. It's like a defense's version of Travis Kelce, like the defense's version of Tony Gonzalez, Rob Gronkowski. The Texans are another great example. Jalen Petrie, a guy who had a rough
You could throw Brock Bowers in these, well,
Tony
not in
Gonzalez.
the same category with these niggas yet, but he's the best tight end in the NFL, I ain't gonna lie. And Trey McBride.
Rob Gronkowski. The Texans are another great example. Jalen Petrie, a guy who had a rough year following his rookie season, has found a role.
Brock Bowers just as big as them niggas balls. That's a big dude, bro. But he gonna be in that kind of category. Tony G, Travis Kelce, Rob Gronkowski. Give us some years and give him a good quarterback. He gonna be the
In that hybrid nickel spot. He is a violent run defender who's good enough of a mover to play coverage assignments when he needs to. So I don't really find it surprising that they were the second best defense in the NFL if you look at APR per play. Stylistically, they are very similar to Seattle. Not personnel-wise, Seattle has a lot better defensive tackles, Houston a lot better boundary corners, but both teams are very good at defending the run from a too-high shell. They both have defensive linemen who are very good at two-gapping. They both have that hybrid nickel. I also appreciate Jalen Petrie because look, I hear the concerns about this type of player not being replicable. Yeah, Emanwori, Hamilton, they're anomalies. Guys of that size should not be moving like they do. A 6'4 safety should not be able to guard a tight end and a slot receiver while also plugging up the C-gap. It's like saying NBA teams should just follow the mold of the Spurs and draft Victor Wembanyama. Do 7-footers moving like guards grow on trees? No. Jalen Petrie, though, is not that big. He's 6 foot, 200 pounds. He defends the run a lot different stylistically than a guy like Kyle Hamilton. His best run defense snaps come when he's moving downhill. If he was blitzing on a play and happens to be in the gap the offense is trying to run it. Think of him as like a torpedo. He's an unexpected, violent obstacle in front of the lead blocker, and that's how he's effective. He also avoids blocks a lot more than he takes them on. He uses his quickness to his advantage. He can be difficult to target for a big guard or a slower tight end. Because of that, I think it gives him a boom or bust quality.
It's just men flying on my screen. I could barely catch who he talking about.
But again,
what number this nigga is? He play for the Texans.
Similar to Nick Emanwori.
What number he is, bro? I'm just seeing niggas flying on my screen, bro.
It's minimized because of his sporting cast. Even Emanwori, his size is a bit misleading. He stylistically is a lot more like Jalen Petrie than an actual linebacker. If he tried to defend the run,
Jalen Petrie, what?
Like Sonny
what number this nigga is?
Styles in this upcoming draft, he would get trounced. Seattle would not be as good defending the run as they do. He, too, is more of a boom or bust type of run defender that excels avoiding blocks rather than taking them on. Emanwori just a little different because he can take them on, even if it's not where he's best at. But that's my counter to the people that think size matters in this situation, that it's hard to replicate these guys because they're physical anomalies. I don't necessarily disagree, but it doesn't mean a smaller defender can't play in the box and can't have
He about to talk about Caleb Downs.
a similar impact, even if they're not as great as Kyle Hamilton. Because of that, there's a couple of guys in this upcoming draft I think would play this role perfectly. A guy like Caleb Downs, for example. Some people think he's too small to be able to do it. Some people think he's too rangy and too good over the top for you to minimize his role to just a nickel defender. But he is so good instinctually. He is so good at playing the run in the box without using his strength that I think it would almost be a sin to have a guy who is that good of a tackler and is that good instinctually not in the box.
Yes.
He's kind of similar to Jalen Petrie in that regard. Jalen Petrie is just a little more of a head case, I guess you could say. He is a lot more just run and hope good things happen, whereas Caleb Downs is a lot more calculated. He's seeing things happening.
Bro, Caleb is smart, bro.
Before they
I need Caleb Downs, bro. Pause, bro. Oh my God.
develop. There's a rep specifically I'm thinking of. I can't show
I hope the Giants don't take it. Giants, please take Sonny Styles or something.
it because I think there's some kind of hoops that you need to jump through to be able to show college film, but he diagnoses based on emotion from Malachi Tony against Miami and completely shoots the gap before it even develops.
Yeah, he was laying that wood on Malachi Tony. Pause.
blows it up. That's the kind of things he does very often. And I think having that player over the top, I don't know, it's weird. I just think it's a position that is becoming a little more important than a traditional safety, a little bit more difficult to replicate than a traditional safety. And Caleb Downs will be really good playing it. Guys like Jordan Lewis in Jacksonville, similar style, although he's more of like your traditional cover slot corner, not the greatest run defender in the world. Quentin Lake in Los Angeles. Nickel corner is so important right now, and I think teams need to treat it as such. I think they need to draft these type of players higher. I don't think there's any reason that Cooper DeJean should have gone in the second round because he was so talented. I don't think it would be smart to draft Caleb Downs and strictly put him over the top. Maybe it's a hybrid rule. Maybe that's how you kind of succeed with that, but he's so good there, and it's such an important position right now that I think that's where he's best at. Another counter I have to the size argument that people like to bring up with Kyle Hamilton and the unreplicability is I think there is another type of player that fits this mold that kind of solves for this conundrum. If you noticed earlier when bringing up the top defenses in the NFL according to DVOA, I did not bring up who came in second, the Minnesota Vikings. That's because they don't follow this mold. Not even remotely close. They run base personnel 53% of the time. That is the highest in the league. Editing me, it's just not the highest in the league. It's third, but close enough. You get the point. I want you to think of this role that Emmanwori is playing, that the Ravens have found so much success with Kyle Hamilton playing, that Petrie is playing, as less of a nickel corner, like Kenny Moore, Mike Hilton, Chris Harris Jr., Trey McDuffie earlier in his career, and more like hybrid strong safeties, almost like the love child of a strong safety and Will.
My nigga talking about some Caleb Downs got an ACL injury. Gang, I don't care if that nigga on cocaine. I don't care if he do cocaine, bro. Please draft him. Like, we'll let you know when they say it.
Linebacker. Think of it less as a corner that's just too small to play on the outside and more of like combining everything that is good about a corner, a safety, and a linebacker. Because of that, a lighter linebacker could theoretically play this role. In fact, there is one playing it in Minnesota, Andrew Van Ginkel. Most fans immediately think of him as a dude who plays on the ball a lot, is more of a D lineman that drops into coverage, and I don't think that's wrong, but the more I watch him, the more I see Nick Emmanwori. He, too, lines up on the ball a lot. And Andrew Van Ginkel this past season lined up all.
But Minnesota got a good defense, boy. Which I think they're going to do with Kyler Murray. Gang, they got Jordan. He going to get Justin Jefferson. What am I saying? Jordan. The fuck I'm about to say Jordan Tyson. What am I trying to say? He got Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. Well, yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Jordan Addison. Like, bro, and they got a good defense, bro. Like, bro.
Off the ball.
Niggas saying Minnesota might go 17-0. I don't think that's gonna happen, but bro,
a lot more. And that's because AVG.
Like, niggas forgot how good Kyler Murray was, bro. Like, they forgot how good that nigga is. He just dealt with injuries, like.
Is a lot better than a traditional well linebacker in coverage. In fact, he's very good in coverage. I think he's just as good as he is in coverage against the run or against the pass. He's built a living off of diagnosing and picking off screens. He's also very good at carrying tight ends. He may not be the best when it comes to carrying slot receivers, but I've seen him do it. I think the real evidence of this, though, is how Minnesota plays when he's not on the field. If AVG was hurt or he wasn't available this season, Josh Metellus played the nickel role. He was your traditional hybrid strong safety will linebacker. He played the role of Nick Emmanwori, Kyle Hamilton. Now, he definitely doesn't do a good job carrying slot receivers. He really doesn't do it at all. He's not nearly athletic enough for that. Because of that, it might seem like a lot of hoops to jump through just to reclassify a will linebacker. And you might be right, but I just think stylistically he is a little different than your traditional will. The Browns are the reason I kind of think that a linebacker could do it, because they have both. They have Grant Delpit, who is more of your Kyle Hamilton type, but they also have Jerome Baker, who is a more athletic linebacker, your more Andrew Van Ginkel type. The last point I have to make is what really separates Emmanwori from a strong safety or AVG from a will linebacker. Look, I'll be honest, if you just want to call Andrew Van Ginkel a will, or just a regular linebacker who just so happens to be really good in coverage, that's fine.
Browns got a good defense, too.
But
they just got to get Shedeur some weapons. Get that boy Jordan Tyson. Get him Jordan Tyson.
Like I mentioned earlier, what
have him in Cleveland with his brother.
Separates Emmanwori from a nickel corner is the fact that they can do it and they can have him on the field while operating out of a too-high shell and not giving up anything against the run. If Eamon Worry was doing this just out of one high and they still had a regular nickel on the field, I mean, he'd just be Cam Chancellor, but he's not. Seattle isn't giving up anything on the back end in the coverage department outside of him. They're not giving up one-on-ones on the back end. They're not sitting in cover 3. They don't have a vulnerability of getting beat deep. It's everything NFL defenses have feared over the last decade, really solved by one hybrid position. I think it's the future. Some may argue it's hard to replicate, but I disagree. Not only can these guys have different play styles, I think a lot more of them are starting to get produced at the college level. It's often quoted that the NFL is just a couple years ahead of college football. It's hotly debated. How true it is, I don't know. But what I do think is that the leagues take from each other a lot. Think of like the early 2010s, they tried to take that spread, quick offense attack. I think you're going to see a lot more college teams employ a bigger safety as a kind of a hybrid nickel corner. As a result, a lot more are going to be drafted. It's going to make it a less of a unicorn position. Think of like 20 years ago with dual threat quarterbacks. They didn't really exist. Now all of the best ones in the league can do both. In fact, if you can't do both, you're really not.
That what they used to call it, the tower quarterback, the pocket, but a pocket quarterback, that's just gonna like that as the Tom Brady's like Tom Brady Tom Brady had pocket awareness, pocket presence. Like he'll step up, move around a little bit, step around in the pocket, but that's the statue quarterback. That's gone, bro. That's what they call it.
Quarterback. And at that point, offenses are going to start.
Yeah, Matthew Stafford, who he playing?
Not going to be a great quarterback.
Yeah, Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford, and Dak Prescott. They the only niggas left.
And at that point, offenses are going to start adjusting for it. Maybe they do just kind of bring in pseudo-offensive linemen as tight ends, or maybe just bring in more offensive linemen to make up for that. But I guess you kind of give up a bit in the passing department. I don't really know. I don't work as an NFL mind for a reason. But it will be interesting to see. With that being said, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate everyone.
Yeah, make sure to come subscribe and I'll do this. Them safeties, bro. That could get you a Super Bowl, bro. Nick Emenwari, CJ Gardner Johnson, like we done seen it, bro. I'm telling you. I'm out.